I'm so excited about this program and bringing together the Year of Being Human at the museum with the first ever Boston AI Week. So thank you again for spending your time with us. We have a remarkable panel, so we're just gonna get them up here because they all have very long bios. So I'm gonna get started and we'll start our conversation. First is Jenn Azar. Jenn is the CEO of Stellix, a company whose mission is to unite people, science, and technology and deliver transformative solutions for a more sustainable future. The Stellix group of companies have a shared mission of partnering with customers in life sciences, energy, and industrial manufacturing to enable innovation, scale, and speed to market. She previously served as NECI's Executive Vice President of Systems and Software. During her time in that role, she grew her business unit to the largest and most profitable in the history of the organization. Jenn is very passionate about the future and advancing science to change lives for the better. Her vision is to leverage the power of digital and the promise of new science in Industry 5.0 to deliver business impact and a great experience for customers. Most recently, she joined the advisory board here at the Museum of Science, a role she's deeply enthusiastic about as it allows her to support the museum's mission and help shape the future of STEM education and innovation. Welcome, Jenn. We did not plan to have matching sneakers today, but there it is. Next, we have Christina Luconi, the founder and chief people innovator at People Innovation. Christina specializes in creating cutting-edge culture and people strategies for startups and high-growth companies. Formerly the chief people officer at Rapid7 for many years, she was responsible for the entire employee lifecycle with a particular focus on recruiting top talent, shaping and inspiring corporate culture, advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and scaling with soul. I love that. Christina has also held senior leadership roles at Stake and Sapient, where she drove growth from startup through post-IPO growth by aligning business and people strategies. She mentors at MIT's Martin Trust Center for Entrepreneurship and sits on multiple boards. Christina holds a degree in psychology from George Washington University and a master's degree in organizational administration from BU. Please welcome to the stage, Christina. Moving along. Next, we have Kris Pennella. Kris is a recognized leader in AI and digital transformation, known for her insights on the evolving relationship between AI and human-computer interaction. As a trusted advisor to both venture capital firms and global enterprises, she specializes in bridging AI-driven innovation with impactful business transformations. She has spearheaded and managed large company transformations for organizations like Microsoft and Red Hat. Her expertise extends to board leadership, serving as a board advisor and independent board member for private companies, where she guides strategic growth and innovation. Her work continues to influence the direction of AI adoption and makes her a very sought-after voice at the intersection of tech and business leadership. So welcome to the stage, Kris. And finally, we have Rana el Kaliouby, co-founder and managing partner of Tulip Ventures. She has the longest one, so everybody buckle up. Rana is a pioneer of human-centric AI. She really is. She is the co-founder and managing partner of Tulip Ventures, an early-stage venture firm investing in AI at the intersection of health and wellness, future of work, and sustainable living. As the host of her podcast, Pioneers of AI, which is great and I highly recommend, Rana explores our humanity and our artificial intelligence. Previously, she co-founded Affectiva and led the company as CEO until its acquisition by SmartEye in 2021. In addition to her entrepreneurial work, Rana serves as an executive fellow at HBS, co-chairs the Fortune Brainstorm AI conferences. She is the author of a book, Girl Decoded, which is also great. She serves as a trustee at the Boston Museum of Science, here with me, and is an Eisenhower Fellow, a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, and a member of YPO. She has earned spots on Fortune's 40 Under 40, Forbes' Top 50 Women in Tech, and the Boston Globe's Top 50 Tech Power Players. She holds a PhD from the University of Cambridge and a postdoctorate from MIT. Welcome to the stage, Rana. Yes, we also did not plan to, but we are wearing our Museum of Science red. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for being here today. I'm really excited to have all of you here. We're going to start, excuse me as I pull out different papers. We're going to start with a quick question for everyone just to get us warmed up. So as AI rapidly integrates into the fabric of our lives, what is one aspect of being human that you have already seen transformed by AI in your own work? So Jenn, we'll start with you and go around.
Yeah, sure. Can you all hear me okay? I'm a soft speaker, so they say, with a very strong Boston accent. So one place that I would say I see AI making a difference in my world is just in decision making, right? It's reshaping the speed and confidence in which I can make decisions. In the industry that I work in, life science, we now are provided real-time insights, more predictable outcomes. We can mitigate risks in a different type of way, and we can act with greater precision. So all of that, I think, is really making us and enabling us to make decisions faster. But one point I would say is it doesn't replace our judgment. It just enhances our ability to make the decisions.
Great, thank you.
This was the one question I did not prepare for, so I've been thinking about how I want to respond to this. I will say, remember that game we played when we were little? What would you, if you had a superpower, what would it be? Mine was always, I would love not to have to sleep. I'm insatiably curious, and I wish there were more hours in the day. For me, AI has allowed me to expand on my curiosity and free up. I'm so more nimble on things that, not the non-humanity, we're going to get into that tonight, but the regular stuff, it's making me more efficient, that I feel like I've created more hours in the day for myself. So I feel like I kind of gained that superpower.
I love that term nimble, because when I think about how it's evolved me, it's really about me as a persona and how I approach my work, and the availability of data and being able to make decisions, strategize around it, as well as keep the contextual conversation going with it, has really transformed how I proceed through any of the playbooks that I'm working on with customers. I will say I heard a great comment downstairs that as AI is still very nascent at the consumer level where we're using it, it's really about having a bunch of interns at the ready, eager, wanting to provide the right answers, but maybe not completely fully formed yet. And that's where your human judgment comes in.
I'll share a personal kind of point of view. I'm surprised by how much I not defer, but AI is kind of a thought partner with a lot of personal parenting advice, relationship advice. And so I actually had Arianna Huffington on Pioneers of AI, my podcast, and she talked about how she thinks of AI as the GPS of the soul, how it helps you self-reflect, think about kind of meaning of life questions, and I kind of agree with that, and that surprised me. I did not expect to use AI that way.
Yes, that was a wonderful episode. I did hear that last week. So I have questions for the panelists sort of in their area, but really we just want this to be an interactive, so feel free to jump in at different points if you'd like to add to the answers. But I think as we said, so Jenn's going to talk about our health, Christina is going to talk about our work, Kris is going to talk about our technology, and Rana will talk about our humanity, but we'll sort of mix all of that together. So Jenn, we'll go to you. I like to say that Stellix is like the most famous company that nobody knows. Because you helped Moderna scale production of the COVID vaccine remotely during the pandemic. So can you tell us a little bit of that story and what that experience taught you about being human in a digitized and really high stakes situation?
Yeah, sure. So that had a new science that we had to bring to market, a new modality, along with using a new stack and working differently. So a three-way change. And the speed at which we had to go was a new pace, a significant change in the pace of how we had to work. I would say that my biggest lesson from that was that the team of engineers that worked on that with the scientists, they had built trust already because we had this connectivity because of how we previously worked. And that allowed us to just change the way we worked faster than we could. I think about today and my hybrid employees do we have that same level of connectedness that if there was another pandemic, could we go that fast? So the technology was ready, the science was ready, and what it really came down to was changing the people and the way they worked in a way that we could keep up with the speed at which the world needed the vaccine. So takeaway is invest in your human capital as part of your digital transformation strategies. Digital transformation isn't a technology project. It's a program and a journey, and it's really here to redesign the way we work so that we can work differently. And I think a lot of companies think of it as a technology and not really a strategy to make humans more successful.
I think that's a theme that's going to come up a lot today, is the humanity piece of the technology and the trust. It's so important, and it comes up at every panel, and it's for good reason. Christina, as AI reshapes job roles and automates tasks, how do you see the nature of work and skills that we value changing over the next decade, and what should companies and individuals do to sort of get themselves prepared?
How it will change or how I think it should change? Because
you could do both if you'd like, sure.
I think, AI is phenomenal for repeatable tasks and making us more nimble and efficient and all of those things. But what's left, I think, are the things that really matter the most, at least in my mind, the things that matter the most. The judgment, the creativity, the emotional intelligence, adaptability. You can't technology out of those, right? I mean, those are important human skills. And I worry that we're spending so much time becoming efficient that we're losing that edge or that curiosity that makes us humans, like that sizzle reel we just saw, right? So I think I would love to see organizations kind of doubling down on the reskilling of those human traits, not the technology. I mean, we can all learn to adapt to new technology. That's not the hard part, really, I don't think. But it's the understanding that those human traits that can't be replaced by technology are still incredibly valuable and needed. And I think the leaders of the future are going to be the ones that really double down on those pieces and figure out how to balance it all.
Yes, I can't remember where I saw it, but one of the most skills in most demand, I think, going forward with for companies is going to be EQ, and it's hard to teach. You need people who are able to sort of have that and pull that together and have the humanity in the technology. So, I definitely agree with that. Kris, hi. What are some of the most exciting AI-driven innovations that you think will really improve our daily lives and productivity, both personally and from a professional perspective in the near future? And maybe give us a couple of examples. I know you worked until very recently as the head of AI innovation at Microsoft. No big deal. So maybe talk about a little of what you saw there and what you see now in your current work.
All right, I'll certainly hopefully give a couple of great examples. First of all, as somebody that's been working with emerging technology for longer than I probably care to admit, it's been very exciting just to see the rate and pace of change with artificial intelligence capabilities. It's no longer something that was really relegated to what we would think of as like a deep tech stack. It's propagated up to consumers and everyday lives. And that's changed the way we've interacted with technologies just in general. What we think of in terms of interfaces now, touching your keyboard, a screen, maybe even like a touch screen currently, those are going to continue to evolve quickly. So the nature of work and how you interact on your day-to-day will progress. But for right now, there's some really just great productivity savers and innovations that I find exciting for consumers and for businesses. So I've got two examples. The first one is more of a personal example. A friend of mine was trying to fix his stand mixer and took the motor apart and realized that one of the parts had cracked. Now these are super small metallic parts. So he picks up his iPhone, opens up his camera and says, "Siri, what is this? And where can I find a replacement for it?" In under 2 minutes, he had found the part, ordered it. It was en route, shipped to him. 3 days later, he had a brand new working stand mixer again. So simple efficiencies, multimodal, that was voice, that was image, that was search, all just, time saving. The second one, and I told Jen I'm going to pick on Jen for Stellix today. We're going to do a digital transformation because it's a good amalgamation of a few different emerging technologies. So across the work that I've done in the years, I've uncovered teams that have wasted up to 20% of their time finding and fixing human data errors. And this is due to the fact that they are working with disparate data systems, different data formats, and finding and fixing errors is just, a bane of everybody's existence. Now, you may have heard that the term agentic AI, it's been very popular. These are small applications which can take action on their own, they can interact together, and they're becoming more embedded in common workplace tools that you see today. So ERP systems, you see them in your workflow systems, and that's due to the fact that the data is very standardized within these systems, making it easier to create and deploy these type of agents. It's an evolution of rules-based systems at its heart. So let's say I'm a member of Jen's company, and let's say that I'm working in the accounts receivable department. A vendor that you work with, maybe you've ordered some supplies from, is uploading an invoice into your financial system. Take your pick. If there are AI agents embedded within this system, it is going to do a bunch of my work for me. It's going to reconcile the invoice. It's going to check it against the PO. It could go out and check into any of your supply chain systems and just make sure that the ingredients are accurate for whatever it is that you've ordered, and then alert me when it's time to either do an approval or if there's an exception. Now, this reduces the risk that I'm going to make an error, which is quite possible if you've ever seen me type, and give you an improved view of your financials in more real time. The other thing, though, is let's say it cuts down 50% of my time. What does my new role look like if suddenly 50% of my time is accounts receivable? So these, not only are we talking about efficiencies, we're reimagining workplace roles. So, I'll leave it to you. What should my next role be now that I've just saved Jen about half my job?
That's great. It's actually, you raise a really good point, which is something I say to people all the time, especially if they're just getting started with AI. I think tonight's audience, the intention is that you can be anywhere on your AI journey today to join us. Sort of AI curious to AI experts, as we say. But you raise a really good point, and something I like to start with leaders who are just sort of getting started with AI is to say, look at the tools you already have, and then use your favorite AI, which Claude, Gemini, whatever, to look up what are the AI functionalities that are native in your tools, and you can start to maximize that, and it's a good way to sort of get you started. So it was an excellent point. Rana, congratulations on 1 year of your podcast.
Thank you.
Very excited. Yes, round of applause. You end all your podcasts with the same question. What makes us human in the age of AI? You can see why I wanted her on the panel. I would love to have you share, some of maybe a couple of your favorite answers to that question.
Yeah, and it's actually been great seeing the sizzle reel because some of the answers showed up here too. It's been fascinating seeing the diversity of responses. So I'll just rattle off a few that stuck. One that comes up a lot is human connection. So what does it mean to be human in the age of AI? We double down on human connection. Experience, like the fact that we experience life. AI can't do that yet. Curiosity, love, agency. That was Reid Hoffman's answer. Also the name of his latest book, Super Agency. I thought that was cool. Storytelling. Yeah, so it's all these qualities that, hopefully empathy. It's another one.
Right, yeah. That, we can build technology, but all of those things are innately human, and we need to keep those for ourselves. And hopefully, I won't get too much into the quote that Tim gave. I think some of us might have been disagreeing with the little parts of that. But, just to make sure that we are keeping that core of being human, the creativity, the love, the empathy, I know those are considered soft skills, but really I believe in, having that be the base of hopefully we're using AI to take off more of, the administrative tasks, and we have more time to be human.
Yeah. One of Yuval Harari's, one of my favorite quotes of his, he says, as AI evolves, the very definition of what it means to be human will evolve too. And I think that's been true with every technological innovation and transformation. We've adapted as humans in terms of how we use the technology, and it's always unlocked potential, right? So I like to take that human-centric approach that, we don't want AI to replace us. It's a tool, but it can help unlock our potential and human flourishing and bring out the better versions of ourselves, hopefully.
Yes, enhance our decision-making and all of those things.
Yeah.
I
wanna build
also
on
think that resilience is really important skill for us to develop. So I got to a point where I can't outwork myself, right? I had to surrender and say, how do I use AI so that I can gain back my time? And it changes every day. So I think the first thing to admit is it's hard. It's hard to change. Think of anything you've tried to change in your life, and think of the commitment it takes to make that change in your work practice. But once you get past that, you find ways that it challenges you to work differently, but you actually have created time for the space. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg. Which one goes first? Do you continue to suffer, or do you figure out new ways to work? So for me, it was, I personally had to just time block and set time aside to kind of try to change the way I worked before I could ask my organization to. But I think resilience, because the rate and pace of change, it's different. Every day you open up an AI tool, it's different. It can do more. And so it's not a regular technology change that we're used to. It's exponential.
Go ahead.
Just going to keep
Yes,
going. I don't want to
please.
throw you off. I agree with both of what you're saying. I think part of the being human in this, though, is knowing when to pull away, right? We have so much at our disposal now and so much access, and I can optimize my life in a way that I couldn't do a couple of years ago, which is great. But then I had one of these really silly aha moments the other day. I've been ordering groceries online for years. Saves a lot of time and energy. And then I realized, wow, have I become lazy? Because now it pops up every week, and it's like, oh, you want to order the same stuff? Yep. Look, I saved myself 3 minutes because I didn't even order anything new. And then I thought, God, I have missed out on taking the extra few minutes to go down the aisles of a grocery store and say, oh, there's a fruit I haven't had in 6 years. Maybe I could make something new. Or it's like there's too much technology some days that you're missing just being in the world and engaging in the world. So I think we all have to balance that out for ourselves and know when to say when and when to optimize and when to back away.
And then in addition, also realize that the way that some of these tools and platforms are structured is that they're just feeding you data based off of what you've been doing in your data. So you're going to continually see the same things without the diversity and exposure into other areas.
Agree. See, love this. Just keep chatting. This is great. Okay, I'm going to go back to Jenn. We'll go around again. Personalized medicine just is fascinating to me and is transforming treatment, but also redefining the patient journey. So how do you see AI empowering individuals, not just the systems, in the future of health?
Yeah, so I have a lot of passion around this topic. I believe the industry, the life science, biotech industry, is really moving from treating disease to treating the people. And let's be honest, our conditions and our uniqueness make that really complex. And there is a ton of science pent up in Cambridge that there's patients on the other sides waiting for. And so really figuring out how to make these treatments affordable and accessible to everyone, AI can play a really big role in that. And it's accelerating the ability for patient centricity models and moving us from the average, which I think is exciting. And the future I want to see isn't just smarter systems, it's systems that recognize each person's story. supports them in their journey, and delivers care and feels as human as it is high tech, right? And so we're really lucky to live in the part of the world that we live in, and getting to see how personalized medicine is changing with digital, right? There's a lot of new molecules and therapies that are happening at a faster rate than we ever could discover before. And now it's figuring out how to industrialize those much faster at a better, more affordable price point. So I think it's an exciting time.
Can I build on that?
Please.
Because like you, it's an area I'm very passionate about as well. And maybe I'll represent the investor kind of perspective. I really believe we're at a cusp of a health span revolution. And it's kind of enabled by ubiquity of sensors. There's new types of sensors. There are a lot more available and mainstream and affordable data, multimodal data, and then AI, both predictive AI, which we seem to have forgotten about, but it's really powerful, and as well as generative AI. And so I envision all of these coming together into this incredible AI health co-pilot that knows you super well, so it gives you these personalized recommendations. It's preventative. It's not just treating disease, but it's it's targeting wellness. And there's a lot of possibility there. One area that is especially, I think, underfunded is women's health. So if anybody in the audience is building in this space, come find me. It's, Anyway, so I really think it's a very exciting time to be building in this space.
Yeah, I think we're at an inflection point. And as we can do more predictive things and have those at our fingertips, right? I think about personalized medicine, personalized food, like all the things that make us unique and can make us thrive and have better quality of life. It's so close. The technologies are there. It's just so the business models.
I know.
So close. While we're talking, I just want to remind folks you can be sending in questions. We're going to check. We'll get to as many as we can. I'm sure we won't get to all of them, but just a reminder to do that. So Christina, I've been gently stalking all my panelists. You had a great post on LinkedIn recently, and the headline was, "If we don't define humanity, AI will do it for us." Can you talk about some of the points you made there? And I'd love to open that up, definitely to Rana, but really anyone on the panel to sort of jump in there. But why don't you get us started?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I don't think AI has values, and if we don't articulate what we stand for, it will default to whatever data we're feeding it, right? So bias and all. So I think this becomes a real leadership challenge. Leaders need to be really crystal clear on purpose and values and behaviors, and then hardwire those into the way that we do work, right? It's been really interesting to me, having spent my career in tech companies in Boston and Cambridge for a lot of years, that for the first time I'm seeing more and more tech leaders or tech-forward thinkers come out of these amazing institutions and all these things that we're surrounded by. And the benefit to that is just some really brilliant technologies surfacing. The bad news for that is a lot of these folks have been, I don't mean this to be divisive, but oftentimes wed in technology, not in leadership, right? So they're so fixated on the tech they're building, they're forgetting about the human pieces of that. And I would say that the leaders that are going to thrive in the future are the ones that figure out how to balance those elements, those behaviors, and I know it sounds touchy-feely, but the cultural elements are the things that technology will never be able to, can maybe potentially enhance it if we teach it the right way, but it's not going to change our souls. And I think that is going to be a really large leadership challenge.
Agreed. Rana, do you want to jump in on that one?
I think one of the questions that I'm really thinking about is in this world where AI is embedded in everything we do, what does the future organization look like, right? And I envision an org chart where I invest in a few companies that are building AI coworkers, whether it's an AI healthcare administrator or an AI manager. What will that future org chart look like, and how do we build it in such a way that it's a very effective and healthy collaboration with AI? So that's one question. And then Insu and I were just having a conversation just before the panel on AI companions and AI friends. So that's a whole different topic, right? And kind of, how can it be a healthy relationship? And there's many ways it can go wrong. So finding that right balance, I think, is very important.
No, I didn't know if you wanted to weigh in on that. I'm coming to you next. So here. This is a very broad question, but how is AI democratizing technology? Again, purposefully broad question, but I'd love to hear your observations about what you're seeing, again, firsthand in all the roles that you're involved in right now.
Great. It is definitely a very broad question. So we've definitely covered so far, lower barriers to use and, kind of democratizing how we're using it. The examples that I brought to answer this question tonight are actually going to be about integrating new data sources to actually drive innovation and specifically fostering public sector and private sector innovation cycles. So I have 2 examples of that this evening, and I'm going to pick on Jenn's company again in a great way because you teed it up so well for me. Okay, the first one is the concept of using digital twins for scenario planning. Any of you who have been in manufacturing or industrial recognize that you can digitally replicate models in order to optimize, predict like when machinery or devices will go wrong. Well, companies are starting to use this more broadly for scenario planning. We live in a very volatile and evolving world, and it's certainly causing some consternation when it comes to strategic planning. So being able to do real-time strategic planning across new initiatives, current business sets, has become important. Now, as part of the strategic planning, you're pulling in your company's data, you're pulling in revenue, you're pulling in your product, various things that you have access to. Additional data that I've seen become more prevalent over the years is first weather as a variant in businesses because we are seeing more things, earthquakes, fires, tornadoes, and hurricanes. And so those also have business impact. Some of your employees live in these regions or you have data centers. Those are becoming more prevalent. And then the second piece that I found more interesting, which is also adjacent to weather, is very recently, NASA created a digital twin of the sun in order to study solar flares and solar storms. Now, for any of you out there who are struggling with like your data strategy and have FOMO, NASA just sort of showed up and hey, we replicated the sun 93 million miles away. So why is this interesting? Close to predictive real-time data for solar flares, electrical magnetic radiation. What do those affect in any low or Earth orbit devices? Satellites, the International Space Station, which I'll get to in a moment, telecommunications, the electronic grid. These are now all becoming additive consternations into strategic planning because what happens if your data center on the East Coast goes down? Can you transfer over your customer, right, cleanly with all of your data? Let's say, Jenn, that you are working with a customer and you're building the next line of medical pharmaceutical development, and you want to do some of that research on the International Space Station. Having this data, which happens because you've been part of that, having this additional predictive data about disruptions to the space station could help you scenario plan any of the manufacturing and research around these medicines. So it certainly has it's becoming more prevalent and having more downstream effects. So that's the first example. The second example is about UNICEF, the global NGO, which mission is really focused on children, and their mission can be really distilled down into save more lives. So I had the opportunity to lead an initiative with them. They wanted to develop an innovative platform for global disaster monitoring and alerting. So this would allow them to understand what was happening at any given time so that they can monitor situations, rally their planning, their troops, their aid as it's coming out. The platform to do this integrated data across multiple sources, weather, health statistics, global disaster tracking, which is volcanoes, earthquakes, natural civic unrest, war, guerrilla warfare. And all these came from different and disparate sources, some public, some private, some from different countries. And they needed to be all standardized and pulled together into this platform. But the power of doing this for UNICEF was, it was predictive. It allowed them to distribute quickly in the regions that they needed to provide aid. It improved their emergency response planning and resiliency and allowed them to coordinate with other aid groups. So ultimately, we're talking about being human in the age of AI. This is AI saving humans.
That is an amazing answer. I did not know what her answer was going to be. I was very curious how you would answer that question. That was mind-blowing. Thank you for that. Sorry, feel free to jump in if anybody wanted to jump in there, but that was fantastic. And I love that you're picking on Jenn. Excellent. Rana, I'm going to go to you next. Advances in AI raise profound questions about what it means to be human and how we interact with technology. How do we ensure that humanity remains at the core of AI development? I know you're so focused on human-centric AI. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
I loved what Christina said about being intentional. So anybody who's in a leadership position, I think it's so important to embed the culture, the values that matter to an organization in how teams work. I'll give a few examples just from my journey as a founder. So when I was CEO of my company, Affectiva, we pioneered the field of artificial emotional intelligence. And so we were building computer vision algorithms that could detect things like if a driver is falling asleep at the wheel or, texting while driving. So we amassed a ton of data, and we would build these algorithms, and we would partner with automotive companies, global automotive companies, on deploying these technologies worldwide. And so in one case, we were bidding on a project for a big European auto manufacturer. I'm not going to name them here, but they sent us a data set to test the algorithm, and it was literally very, very biased. It was just a group of 30-year-old, blue-eyed, blonde coders from their Polish office. And we took a look at the data. It was really easy for us to just test our algorithm. We would have passed with flying colors, got paid by this company, win the deal, move on. And I remember being in the room with my executive team and thinking, this is not right, and this is our opportunity to raise the bar. And so we actually went back to that company and we were like, this data set is no good. If you want to do this right, we need to collaborate on building a diverse global data set which represents your drivers and customers. And so it took a lot longer to do this project right, but we were good partners. We raised the bar for what AI needs to look like. And I just wish more, startups are under a lot of pressure to ship product. And so sometimes these kind of responsible AI safety, bias, governance are not top priorities, but I think we have to just be very intentional about these things.
Agreed. You look like you. Go ahead, you can talk.
I was going to say, I think that's just one of the key things when you're evaluating a tool or a new startup to bring into your organization is to actually understand how they've developed this solution and where there could be risk for bias or weighting against those data sets.
Yeah, excellent point. All right, I'm just watching the time. I think we're still okay. We can still go. Excellent, thank you. Okay, great. We're going to do another round of questions. Again, Jenn Azar, a great quote from you, and I think you alluded to it here. AI does not replace human judgment, it enhances it. So what ethical or cultural considerations do you think leaders in life science must sort of deal with as AI becomes more embedded in how we're diagnosing and manufacturing and delivering care?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So I think leaders that will thrive in the future embed ethics and culture into their digital strategies. We've all spoken about that. I think leadership takes a new role and a really big responsibility to make sure that happens, to ensure that we can trust, have access, and governance in the right way. So a few examples are your data sets can't be biased. So we need to make sure that we have an equitable set of data. We need to make sure the regulatory frameworks that the FDA is working on come along to support the direction that we're going in so we can govern safety. Innovation pipelines, women's health, like Rana says, making sure that we really align those pipelines in a way that lines up with society values. And then I think AI is going to reduce complexity, which will allow affordability. So we have to use it for good, right? Just because you get more efficient doesn't always mean you should make more margin. So I think those things are really critically important to the future.
Yeah, I love that last point. That was a great one.
You know what? I think it seems so obvious when we talk about it, but I meet so many
it's not.
startups where it's not at all top of mind. So
I think that's because AI hasn't really been completely accepted as a strategy. People are still trying to use it as a technology to boost productivity and have better operational excellence. I don't know that everyone's really thinking about it like a strategy for our future.
I may be way off here, but I think, AI's been around for a long time. But realistically, over the last couple of years, it's really popped for the common person. And I think it's appeared at a time that we're going through massive transition in the world, right? I hate to blame the pandemic for anything, but I think it's notable because I watched so many people, having spent my career trying to nurture great cultures and build companies that have some soul, et cetera. And all of a sudden, we saw this shift where people went, I don't know if some of your companies did this, but the company I was at, when the day the pandemic, like everyone sent everyone home, and people were like, no, I can't work at home. This is going to be, we're still living in this 5-day-a-week thing. Well, that ship sailed pretty quick, right? All of a sudden, it was like, I'm not going back to the office ever. I'm working in sweatpants for the rest of my life. And I think that it was like opportune. I think people were excited to have something that made life a little bit easier and then just went wild with it. So I think it's an interesting point of time that we're in when all of these things sort of coincided with each other, which means I think we have to hold ourselves that much more accountable to not lose ourselves in the technology.
Well, and that's actually a great segue to something that I wanted to ask you, because you're so focused on culture and so good at building culture. So how do we make sure culture doesn't get lost in sort of the efficiency of AI?
I don't know, a lot of ways, I guess. I mean, I think efficiency is incredibly tempting. I love efficiency. But culture lives in the human moments, the mentorship, the recognition, the debates we have with one another. You can't manufacture that with technology. Tried. I think you said like relationships on, I don't know if you ever saw that Joaquin Phoenix movie. I think it was called Her, where he was like in love with his phone.
Yeah, how many people have seen the movie Her?
It's fascinating and terrifying, right?
And also kind of coming true.
Coming true, yeah. I'm pretty sure people have relationships with their phones. So that's a different conversation. But I think companies really need to draw a line in terms of where do we automate and where do we keep things intentionally human, right? I am a huge advocate for hybrid, right? I understand the benefits of remote. I think the world back 5 days a week is probably unrealistic for many companies. But I think you cannot manufacture relationships and trust. And you need to spend some time with one another to make that happen. So I think everyone has to be really thoughtful, very intentional about what they don't want to lose and really what they're trying to build. I think it's easy to come out of the gate with a great new technology idea and get it funded but then what are you trying to build? Are you trying to build something efficient? Are you trying to build something sustainable and extraordinary? And I bet on extraordinary. So I think a lot of that has the human elements built into it.
Yeah, and you raise a great point. Most companies are some form of hybrid, and I think the ones I've seen be most successful with it are the ones who don't just say, just come in whatever days you want. They're thoughtful about bringing teams together to really collaborate in person, and I think that's that human, base and building the culture.
Right. But again, no technology is going to, like somebody said to me downstairs, you get a lot of positive accolades from your from chat, nice, wow, great idea, Christina, let's run with that. Like, I could get very arrogant listening to my technology, but nothing can replace your boss looking you in the eye and saying, wow, that was really impactful what you did. You can't manufacture that through technology. So I don't want to see us lose those things.
Or the other side of it is your AI is giving you so much bias that
total bullshit.
You're having a hard time distinguishing across those impactful ideas.
Yeah,
I was
you're
just
right.
talking with someone downstairs who just recently broke up with one AI and is dating a new one now. I loved that. I loved that approach. Kris, let's go to you. As AI-powered technologies become more integrated into personal devices and smart environments, what are the trade-offs that we're all dealing with, really, between convenience and potential concerns like data privacy and security? It's a big question that comes up a lot.
Well, it's been a hot topic tonight, too. We're talking about trust. Products and technology run on trust. So in order to build that trust with me as a user, it's important for me to understand how responsibly and compliantly your application, your product was developed. Those should be transparent. I should be able to easily be able to find them and determine, am I comfortable with what is going to happen? Because this really, any type of AI application that you're using, healthcare, financial, this is your data you're giving them. So how much of it are they collecting? Where are they storing it? Will it be combined with other data sets? Will it stay in the country? That was I had an interesting discussion about data sovereign recently. And is there a way for me to provide feedback to it if I find an anomaly or an error? But this puts this burden back on us, and especially on the consumer side, because the average consumer outside of their workplace uses more than 6 AI-enabled technologies in a given time span. And if you think about it, you talked about your shopping application. Well, okay, there's one. So your Instacarts of the world. You've got your DoorDashes and Uber Eats. You've got Netflix, Hulu, and Hulu is your streaming services, e-commerce, your GPS. So those are all different companies with all different data policies. And that requires us understanding and determining if we're comfortable to use it. How many times have you spun up a new service and it says, do you consent to or accept, and you just click it? Right. So
we're all petrified right now. Yes.
Right.
Nobody reads those, but
and it's hard to. And at the moment, it's hard to be diligent. Yeah. A great startup idea would be something that allows me to monitor and decide how much of my personal data goes into these applications, because right now governing it is very, very hard. And the same with security. For all of you who sign in with your Google, sign in with your, pick your mail, you are sharing your security credentials across those applications. How much do you trust them? If one of those gets hacked and suddenly your password to 6 different applications, and maybe your banking application is one of them because, you're possibly, that not quite that diligent, what could happen? So many considerations. Really just stop, have some criteria, think about where and how you're using this application, and are you comfortable with the outcomes?
Can I build on that? Because that is so true. And in the world of agentic AI, where we're going to have a number of AI agents acting on our behalf, trust becomes so important because there's a balance between, I guess, autonomy and control, right? And if the more autonomy we give these AI agents to shop on my behalf or book my travel or whatnot, I'm giving up control. And so unless trust and the sense of security, I think it's going to be so important.
Yeah. And some kind of tools to be able to govern.
We could talk about that. Again, all of these topics, we could talk about a whole panel just on each one of these, but thank you for we're weaving in and out. Ron, I'm going to go to you. As AI systems become more autonomous and capable of making decisions that impact human lives, what frameworks or principles do you think are needed to ensure we are creating sort of the ethical AI? This really is that human in the loop thing. So I'd love for you to start and then maybe Christina have you chat as well about that. And I know, Christina, for you, I'm going to lead the witness a little bit. and say, from an HR perspective, like what's the part of sort of the life cycle of an employee that should never sort of be just completely handed over? Like, where do you keep that human in the loop? But let's start with you.
I think we need a new social contract between humans and machines, and one that is built on trust, again, built on empathy, and we need to build a framework where we're comfortable kind of delegating tasks to AI, but also keeping the human in the loop. Our whole investment thesis is that AI ought to augment and amplify human ability, not replace it. And so we're looking for new applications and products in AI that are, that have this human-machine collaboration or partnership. And I think that is very true in 2D AI, like chatbots, but also in robotics. That's another area that's super, super interesting. How do you build a productive cobot or collaborative robots? Yeah.
Can I throw to you for sort of the question again, human in the loop, and from an HR perspective, where what's the part of HR that you sort of think should definitely not be outsourced to AI, if you want to put it that way?
Interestingly, my daughter's in HR, which is, I swear I didn't brainwash her, but she followed in that path, and she's working on she was just tasked with her company saying, we want you to create a chatbot. And she had all these really human-based questions, but it was coming from a technology perspective. Just get it done. And she's like, well, what if the data's wrong? Like, what if we're giving them bad advice? Are we liable? Or, what is happening here with what if somebody's asking a really personal question? Is that okay? Very basic
and
questions.
Where does the data go?
Where's the data going? And
question.
she's asking some pretty smart questions. And there wasn't a lot of answers. Oh, we didn't think about that. And I thought, oh God, there's a human component to this. And HR, I'll be really, if anyone knows me here, like the whole concept of HR kind of stresses me out, because I think it's really like the complaint department, the people that fire you. I tend to think of it in a very different way. But I think there's still responsibility that you have for your people and your organization, and making sure that you're being really thoughtful about the applications that you survive. Should it be, can you optimize around, I have a very simple question. How do I have a qualifying event, I need to sign I just had a baby, how do I sign them up for healthcare? Fantastic. But then the next level thinking about, okay, what am I putting in there? And where's it going, and who has access to that? All of those things, I think you just have to be incredibly thoughtful about. And some of that is having come out of a cybersecurity company. So I'm very, attuned with what has to be protected and not. But I do think we just have to be very careful with bias and personal information and those types of things.
Yeah, so one of my portfolio companies is a company called Tough Day, and they're building AI managers. And they're actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because they're going after this, I guess, Gen Z's, this unbossing trend, where a lot of Gen Zs don't want to.
I'm sorry, did I just roll my eyes?
Yeah, yeah. And my daughter's 22, and I feel like she's definitely unbossing. So she doesn't want to be a boss, and she doesn't want to have a boss. But I don't know if my daughter's comfortable using AI, but basically Gen Zers are comfortable using AI, and so they'd rather have an AI manager versus a human manager. And I thought that was really interesting.
I have a lot of feelings about that. I think it's total bullshit, honestly, because candidly, I didn't want a boss either, so I started a company, right? I think we're trying to, being human is being messy. I like messy. It's probably why I've been drawn to startups, right? Because there's no right answer. You gotta get really resilient, to use your word, Jen, and dust yourself off and try a new idea. That's what, for me, makes life worth living. If I had a digital boss that just, oh my God, I can't even get my head around that. But I don't think I don't know what it's actually gonna, maybe it teaches me some stuff, but I don't know that it's gonna encourage me. I don't know if it's gonna take a bet on me and say, wow, I bet you could actually do that. I'm looking at Linda, who we worked in my first job together, and all these people, she wasn't my boss, but I looked at all of these people that were just a few years ahead of me that I could learn from. And there was not technology involved in that. There was human beings involved in that, and watching what they were doing and watching them have successes and failures I could learn from, or somebody just cheering you on and saying, I believe that you can do this, or empowering you to say, you know, hey, this is gonna be really hard. You have no idea what you're doing, but I know you can do it. No digital manager would ever be able to do that for me, I think, unless I'm really missing something. Sorry.
Do we think this is a trust and a safety thing? Like they don't feel safe asking a human, but they feel safe asking
If we're
a
going to try to
digital
like
manager?
dissect that statement, I don't know that we can do that on the stage, but it's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. Did you want to make a comment?
I was going to just make a very high-level comment about this, and it goes back to when we were talking about RTO in the office and human-to-human connection in general. You know, if you think about how a lot of the consumer tools have evolved, and I'm thinking about like, you know, order me a burrito kind of DoorDash things, we become lazy. And building human connections requires effort. And if you've grown up like, you know, digitally native or now AI native, I think you've lost just some of that capability. You know, if you think about, you know, and I'll get off my soapbox, but like back in the day after work, you know, maybe you'd go out to the bar with people and like you'd hang out and get to know them and, you know, face to face, whatever. There seems to be that lost sense of just how to build a connection, because it's even more than work. You're seeing it in dating and like just relationships as well. So.
And I think the pandemic sort of, not to go back to the pandemic, but same thing. Like it changed, you know, how our human interaction. And I think it made us appreciate being human a little bit more. But now, how do we sort of tie all of that back in? We have a lot of questions. We are not going to get to all of them, but I'm seeing some trends as I'm over here, like, you know, going through. This is not a trend, but this question was really interesting to me. How do you think we as humans should respond to new AI replacing actors and recording artists and the line between human and AI being blurred? I thought that was fascinating. I don't know that we have an answer for that, but if anyone has thoughts on sort of, you know, like digital twins and that sort of thing. So I'm looking at you.
I've been experimenting with my AI Rana, basically, my digital twin. Does anybody here have a digital twin? Yeah, there's a few. Okay, there we go. So basically how this goes is you train the digital twin on your likeness. So it's got all my podcast interviews and a lot of my LinkedIn posts. And so it essentially looks like me, it kind of sounds like me, and it says stuff that I would typically say. And it's been such an interesting journey. I'm actually not super comfortable letting it, I'm always with my digital twin. I have not unleashed her to the world without me yet. But it keeps getting a lot better. It still doesn't have my soul. Like it's kind of interesting. It doesn't smile the way I smile. It's like, it's still a little off, but for somebody who doesn't know me really well, I don't think you can tell the difference. And so the line is definitely blurred. My speaking bureau are basically pitching my digital twin to give keynotes.
Really?
Yes, which that I can see, because you kind of tell it what to say.
You have the speech sort of narrowed down.
Exactly. Yeah. But what about the Q&A?
Right.
Right? Yeah. So it's but this world is happening. It is happening, and I don't think we figured out how to build the right guardrails around these twins and what's acceptable and what's not. And if it says something that I wouldn't normally say, who's accountable?
Right, the
who's
liability
accountable?
of it.
Is it me or is it the AI company that built the twin? Anyway, whole other conversation.
So many things. I know. I thought that was a great question. There's a theme that I'm seeing in some questions that is a lot about training, learning, everything from sort of like middle school, high school level to how do you train employees? Like, you know, there's a lot of questions about how do we get the workforce ready, but how are we getting our kids ready? I know that is another big, broad question, but I would love to hear sort of your thoughts. I know, Jen, not to put you on the spot, but I know you're so focused on women, girls in STEM, and maybe if anyone wants to jump in and talk about sort of what you're seeing, in particularly in sort of that middle school, high school is interesting. And then I'd love to hear again, anything you want to say about the workforce.
So I don't have children, but I can see a real curiosity to understand technology. And so what's the right age? I don't think we can shelter them from it because it's everywhere. They have it on their phones. I think it's more about creating boundaries with it and making it safe for them. Yeah. But I don't think you can shy away from them wanting to be curious and learn. I think we have to encourage them because I think that's where the world's headed, but probably with some balance and governance.
I'm on the board of my kid's school, and I think I was brought on the board
for this purpose.
For this purpose. It's been quite interesting. A lot of the kids use AI every day, but the school hasn't really embraced it enough. And so,
say more about that.
Yeah, like for example, my son who's 16, he's very AI forward. I guess no surprise, but he's really, actually I turned to him for like a lot of, to just learn. He vibe codes a lot. So he uses, platforms that can write code to build stuff. And he uses AI as a thought partner, not to cheat, not to be lazy, but for example, to come up with ideas for essays or, just creative thought partnership. And that is not really acceptable in the classroom. And so sometimes he will disclose it, sometimes he doesn't and might get into trouble. And I think schools are struggling with coming up with the right policies where they let the students embrace AI, which I think is so important, right? But at the same time, do it in a way, and I think the definition of what is cheating is also evolving. So I think it's tough. It's not easy. But my point of view as a parent, anyway, is I love that my son is really embracing AI and trying all these different technologies because that's how I believe he's going to be successful in the workplace.
I think. My parents were both teachers. I can't even imagine how they would be handling this right now. They are retired. But I think it's such a struggle to figure out, like, how do you build it into the curriculum and support it without having them lose their ability to think. And it's really, it's a real balance that I think we're all, figuring out together right now. I didn't know, did you want to jump in there? Feel free.
No, but I think it's such an amazing time, right? I grew up with a dad who has 3 degrees from MIT. I was not headed down that path. My brain did not work like that. And yet I found a place for myself in the tech ecosystem. I think if you zoom ahead 30 years now, that we live in a world where kids are being exposed to things that, just didn't exist, obviously, when I was growing up. And people can find themselves in opportunities that are so much more robust, right? Like, I would have scared the heck out of me to think I'm going to be in a technology field when I was 15 because in my mind I had that's not how my brain worked. Now I look at this and say, oh my gosh, there's such roles for people, especially people with psych degrees and other things, because I think that's going to balance it all out, right? So that whole reskilling or helping people to define what's possible is so much more robust now than it was years ago, which I think is really exciting for kids in school.
I would agree with that. Another theme that I'm seeing a lot of questions on is, I'm trying to boil this down, but basically in terms of, we touched on this, like being more productive, and if all of the employees are more productive, balancing corporate value and profitability with, if people are twice as productive, does that mean you're laying half of them off? We're seeing companies that are letting people go, or are you, again, the term reskilling exists. There's a lot sort of around this space.
There's a lot there, but I think everyone has to do like a deep reflection, like go home and look in the mirror and say, like, how am I really using this? Because as I was leaving my last job a few months ago, we were really starting to embrace AI at a deeper level. Everyone was sort of doing it individually, but as a corporation, we were spending more time thinking about it. And the pushback, I mean, it was a pretty heavy tech company. And yet the amount of pushback from people of like, oh my God, my job's gonna go away, or this is gonna, like, I remember when email came out, people were nervous about that too. You know, I mean, like, technology is going to happen. Advances are going to happen. You can either embrace it and figure out how to maximize it and how to balance it out, or you can get taken along with the storm. And I think I would love to see people really challenge themselves about what can't this do, and what is my unique contribution that will not be replaced. I look at it as like, oh my God, this is fantastic. It can get rid of all my crappy tasks that I don't want to do, and I can spend my time with the more forward-thinking,
and on the
way more
relationship
impactful
part.
stuff. Right. But that's just a choice that we all have to make, I think, for ourselves.
Agree. We do have one more question that I was just going to have everybody answer. I want to make sure we leave time for everyone to be able to handle this. Looking ahead, I want to end on a positive note. You know, we've talked about some of the very positive things, some of the negative things that come with it, but what are you most excited about in terms of AI's potential? So we're going to start with you, Jenn.
Yeah, so I'm the glass half full when it comes to AI and technology, but I'm looking forward to less pilots and really moving towards more of a force multiplier where we can use it as a catalyst for really people-driven outcomes. Like, for example, my passion around treating the human instead of treating the disease, and measuring success by human metrics and not just technological achievements.
Love that. Christina?
I think if we use it right, AI won't make us less human. It will give us more space to be human. Thanks, Linda.
You have like a super fan in the front row there.
You know, if you stop and think about it, we used to learn how to talk to computers. Now computers are learning how to talk to us. And that's really going to reshape just the way that we interact day to day, our workflow processes, you know, our interactions with how you think about what a traditional computer or desktop or even your phone looks like. It's going to just evolve so quickly and become so embedded that it's going to have some pretty profound changes.
Yeah, I would say AI that unlocks human flourishing. So, I don't know, AI that can help us be happier, healthier, more knowledgeable, more curious, and ultimately more connected to each other.
I like flourishing instead of more productivity, right? We can do both. We can do both of those things. Well, I want to start wrapping up. I cannot thank our panelists enough. This was an amazing discussion, and I am so glad that you all are able to join us today. This was wonderful. How about a round of applause for our panel? And again, thank you all for being here tonight. You know, the museum is a very special place to many of us. And I think one of the things that has come up tonight is that AI is here to stay. I think we all need to embrace it in different ways. You know, some of us are gonna build, you know, LLMs, and some of us are just gonna use the tools, and that's good. But I think the museum is a place where, again, you can come and learn, and we can build the future together.